I haven't really done this before, so I hope you forgive any silences or awkward pauses or anything like that. So anyway, let's just start doodling. Let's draw Alia, because I love Alia. I usually start with the guidelines. She's going to be facing this way, so I have the lines kind of pointing in that direction. The nose is going to be kind of this way, since that's where the lines are pointing to. I slowly start putting in where I think everything is going to go. Here's about where I think the chin would go. Here's where the eyes would go. Glasses. I start kind of putting in where the hair is going to end up. And I like to flip the picture back and forth just to make sure everything's looking symmetrical. It should be similar in most software. Image, flip horizontally. My hotkeys are going to be very important. It's kind of like a keyboard shortcut. My keyboard shortcut is Command H. So if I press Command H, it flips the picture for me without having to go into the menu every single time. So I'll just keep going. We're just going to do a real simple doodle so I can get through it quicker. As you can see, it's not very clean. This isn't... that's just how I do it. I don't do everything super clean at the beginning. I just slowly start refining details, like sculpting out what it's gonna look like in the end. You can also hotkey your eraser and your pencil or pen, whatever brushes it is that you like to use. Mine is E for eraser, so here's my eraser. I can erase stuff to make it a little bit easier to see as I'm sketching. It doesn't have to be super clean, just enough so I can kind of see what I'm doing better. And then my hotkey for the brush is B. So B for brush, E for eraser. That's just how it is for mine. You can configure it however you want it. You just go down to keyboard shortcuts and then you can decide what buttons you want for what, like redo and undo. This is going to be your main thing, undo. Control Z or Command C. That's where most of artists' fingers are, I think. Digital artists' fingers are always over the Control Z or the Command Z, just because there's always going to be a mistake. So we're just slowly filling in the details some more. Sometimes if you don't want to accidentally mess up what you already have, like let's say I'm doing the hair and oops, I messed up, look, I got the hair all over the face and now it's everywhere, let's erase it. Oh wait, now I'm erasing the face, no. So instead of doing that, I'm going to go ahead and put the hair on a different layer. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold, so I apologize if my voice is a little hoarse. So I'm just making a new layer. Down here there's a little button for a new layer. I don't know if it should be similar in all softwares, but that's where it is in Photoshop. So I'm actually going to label them. This helps me keep my layers organized. So this one I'm just going to put face, because that's the sketch of Alia's face. And this one I'm just going to label hair. That's where I'm going to put the hair. Alia's hair is not too difficult. I like making it big and floofy. Alright, not too crazy because it's just a doodle. Oh, let's go ahead and save. That's another short key that you're going to, or hotkey that you're going to want to remember. A shortcut, Command Z or Command S or Control S. So let's just put Alia Doodle. So as you go along, you're just going to want to save often, because you don't want to, like this happened to me the other day. There was a power outage and I could have lost everything, but I'm a compulsive saver, so I'm always constantly making sure everything is being saved. Oh, so here's something I did on accident just now. I accidentally put part of an eye on the hair layer. It's not a huge deal because we're just in the sketch layer, but just be mindful of that. Keep your, if you're going to draw something else, remember to switch layers. So let's just finish up the eyes. Alright, let's actually go ahead and start a separate layer for the glasses. Alright, so now that we have finished our sketch, we're just going to actually join all of these layers together. So highlight all of them, merge the layers together, sketch. So here's how I like to proceed. I like to lock this layer. Here's how I lock it. And it makes it so you can't go out of the lines. Just like that, see? It makes it so I can't color anything that has not been drawn on this layer. So part of the reason why I like to color my sketch layer a different color as opposed to just black is so I can start coloring on top of it and just see the sketch easier. It helps you see it easier. You can color it in just like I'm doing, just make your brush a little bit bigger and go over it like that. Or you can also, this kind of takes too long, so I don't usually do this. You can grab your paint bucket and just do it like that. But sometimes you miss some little spots, it's no big deal. You can just go in and fill those in later, or with your pencil or anything like that. What you can also do is go up to Edit and select Fill. It's going to color with whatever your foreground color is. And that's the fastest way. I have it hotkeyed also, so it's even faster. Mine is Shift F5, so that's just what mine is. Yours might be different, or it might be the same, but anyway, that's what mine is. It just colors everything super, super fast. However, look what happens if the layer is not locked. I'm gonna Shift F5 to fill the whole thing. Oh no, what happened? It's because the pixels were not locked. So just be mindful of that. Let's go ahead and start our new layer. This is going to be our lines, our clean black lines, or whatever color you decide your lines to be. I'm going to lower the opacity. That's like how see-through something is. There you go. So whatever brush you prefer, I won't talk too much about brushes. I have customized brushes. Since I've been doing this a long time, I like the kind of settings, or I know what kind of settings I like. If you're not sure what kind of brushes you like, you can play around with them. Like, there's brushes that are really, oops, I'm in the wrong layer. See, it happens sometimes. You can experiment to see what kinds of brushes you have. See, this one, no matter how lightly I press, if I press very lightly, it's a very thin line. If I press very hard, it's a thick line. So some brushes are like that. Others are, if you press lightly, it only very lightly colors the canvas. If you press really hard, it makes it a heavier line. So this is this is actually really useful for coloring if you have a brush that can glide like this. For line art, I like to use kind of something in between. So you can use lots of different, I have lots of brushes, but there are many different types of line art you can do. You can make it kind of thick and thin, cartoony like that. I don't really like doing it that way. I like having a bit more control. It's all down to preference. I like using more of like a pencil. Like, see how it looks a bit natural? It looks a little more like a pencil. It feels more like a pencil. Heck, I don't use most of these. I have my favorites. Like you can see, I've put little stars next to them. You can rename your brushes and mark your favorites. DeviantArt is actually a really good resource for brushes. I've gotten a lot of my brushes from DeviantArt as well. So anyway, I'll just keep drawing now. It's hard to draw and talk at the same time sometimes. So the way to do clean lines, it differs for everyone, but this is the way I do it. There is no correct way. As long as you're satisfied with the result, you can do whatever. So that does not look very clean, right? So here's where my eraser comes in. I like to do short little strokes because I don't always know what I'm going to do next when I draw. Sometimes I just do things at the spur of the moment. So I use the eraser a lot. Let's do the nose. You're going to try to follow your little guidelines from before. You don't have to if there's something you don't like. You don't have to do it. I'm going to be erasing every so often. And this isn't going to be perfect. It's just an example. Oops. I made a mistake. Control Z. Alright, so let's make another layer for the glasses. And again, we should label them. Let's label this one face. Let's label this glasses. And something you can do to help organize your layers is if you have that option to make a group. I like making groups because sometimes I have 100 layers and or at least dozens, and it helps keep them organized because you can just make it smaller like this and it takes up less space. So let's just label this one line art. You can make it as clean or as messy as you like. I don't always like to spend all that time making lines super duper clean. Some people do, and that's totally fine, but it all depends on what you're happy with. Flipping back and forth as usual. I don't actually remember Alia's glasses very well, but I think that's about right. Okay, let's go ahead and make the hair. So since I've shown you how to do clean lines, I'm just gonna be a little messy now so we can get through this a little bit faster. Don't forget to switch layers if you're working on different parts. Erase old lines as you go along, if you want to. It's not necessary. You can zoom in and out. I have little shortcuts for that as well. And let's say I think her face is a little long or something. Maybe I want to shrink the face. You can use your lasso tool to circle it so it only affects that part. And there are many different functions that Photoshop lets you do, or your other programs will let you do. You can make everything bigger, smaller. You can rotate it if I wanted her to be kind of pointing downwards or whatever. Excuse me. There are many different things for you to play with, so whatever you've done can be altered if you want it to be altered. So let's just keep going. Alright, that's good enough for now. It's still a little messy, but you get the main idea. So coloring. Let's talk a little bit about coloring. There are many ways that you can color a picture. What I'm going to show today is just a very basic way, the way that I learned how to color. So let's hide this sketch. These little eyes hide things that you don't need to look at right now. I'm gonna actually poke the little arrow to make the group smaller. They're still there, they're just taking up less space. So let's pick out a good hair color. That looks close enough. For coloring, I do like to use a very solid kind of brush. Like if I were to color with this, that's fine, but it would take a long time because you'd have to pass over it a couple times to make sure everything was blocked out. What you can do is get a very solid brush. Zoom in to make sure you get all the little edges. And that way you don't miss a lot of spots. So this layer obviously is behind the lines. So I can go outside the lines and you can still see everything. Let's just finish coloring in the hair real quick. When you have an area like this that's already circled or contained, you can just fill it in with the bucket and fill in the little lines afterwards. That's one way to do it. Oops, oh look, I made a mistake. We can erase it, or we can Control Z or Command Z. It's magic. I've gotten some questions about coloring and shading too, so I'll go over those in a little bit. And also somebody asked about changing the color of the lines. We kind of went over that during the sketch, but excuse me, I can also go over it in a little bit. Because some people like having colorful lines instead of just black lines. I do too sometimes. So we're almost done with the hair. Or at least blocking in the hair. Coloring can take a while. And so does the line art if you are the type to make it really, really clean. So anyway. Let's go back in and whoops. I realized I forgot the eyebrows. So let's do some eyebrows. I get pretty nervous sometimes when I'm talking. Let's give her some eyelashes too. Alright, it's not the best picture, but it's not bad. Anyway, let's do the skin color now. She's got a nice, let's see if I can find the right shade. It's hard to find the right shade sometimes. Let's just experiment. Let's see if that's the right shade. It looks close enough. It's a bit orange, but it's not bad. If you need to change the color of something, don't forget to use transparencies. They're a really great tool to have. That looks closer, actually. That looks good. Let's label that skin, hair, eye. Oops. Let's go ahead and color in the whites of the eyes real quick. Next, Ollie's got hazel eyes, right? Whoops, that was my alarm. Hazel, I think she does. I'm pretty sure she does. Here we go. I erased a little spot right there to make the shiny part of the eye. And just so we don't have to deal with the checkers, let's give her a different color shirt. Let's give her a blue shirt. Like Nino. Just fill it in real quick. Erase the little irregularities. That's good enough for now. Anyway, that's good for right now. If you want to shade, there are many different options. I'm just gonna lock the transparency and just slowly put in the shading I want. Just real quick, because it's just a doodle. Put darker areas over the parts that you think should be dark, and then we'll go over it with some highlights in a minute. Nothing too fancy. And remember, this is just a very basic tutorial. I'm not going to go over a lot of different layers or a lot of other coloring techniques or anything like that. This is just, if I was starting out, this is something that I would have liked to know. You can just very quickly block in the dark areas, go in with a slightly lighter color to do some highlights. They don't have to look like this. This is just the color I picked. So here's where that multiply layer is going to come in handy. If you use like an airbrush kind of brush, you can see how it's very different from the pencil brush I was using. You can make it a little bit bigger, make it a little more opaque so it doesn't show up super strong. See how it makes the top part, because she has the darker like parts of her hair near the top like that, and then the bottom of her hair is lighter. This is a useful, really quick thing you can do just with the multiply layer. See, we hardly had to do anything and now it's darker. But now we have a problem that there's all this brown stuff and it's going to take forever to erase. And you can do that. Photoshop, if you press Option or Alt and then go right to where the line is, if you click on that, it makes it so it stays behind the lines that we have already colored in for the hair. But let's assume you don't want to deal with that. Let's just go ahead and erase it. So I'm gonna make this stuff transparent so we can see. And let's label it shading hair. But yeah, what I was talking about just now with Alt or Option click is very useful, and it's what I use most of the time when I'm coloring. But in case you don't have that option, you just do it the way I had always done it for years and years, and just erase outside the lines. Okay, I think that's most of it. Let's go ahead and save. Now the skin. Oh, when you click on the color, it lets you take out the little eyedropper. Otherwise, the eyedropper is also up here. In case you weren't following, my apologies. So you can go in and color your skin with the airbrush. That's fine. I don't really like using the airbrush for coloring skin. It doesn't look very natural sometimes. It's just too soft to airbrush, you know. So what I'm gonna do is switch to just whatever brush you want. I'm just going to use the same pencil one. And just put in where you think there should be shadows and where you think there should be highlights. Let's make the light be coming in from this way, like this way. And don't forget to lock your pixels. I like to put a little bit of darkness like around the nose, around the mouth, and anywhere that there's going to be like hair falling, just so there's like a little shadow. And sometimes you can leave it like that, sometimes you can try to blend it in a little bit. Remember that also the pressure of the pen will affect how lightly or how dark the colors will appear. But let's say you wanted to blend in the colors a little bit. You can blur it if that's what you want. And that's pretty good, you know, it doesn't look that bad. But sometimes it doesn't always look like super natural if you're not careful with it. I sometimes use the smudge tool a little bit. And what a lot of people don't know about the smudge tool is that you can pick different brushes for the smudge tool also. So you can actually get some interesting results that way as well, using brushes with the smudge tool. And I like to do that because it's a little more unpredictable, but you can get some nice results if you poke around at your drawings that way. I've got my little smudge tool brushes also that I downloaded, and there you go. Let's do which one was the shirt? I forgot to label it. Shame. Let's color excuse me, let's shade the shirt in a little bit. And you would just pick a color that's a little bit darker. I like to change the hue a little bit to make it more interesting too. A little bit less saturated sometimes. That's a little too light. If you're gonna mess around with it. Not too bad. A little bit lighter for the light areas. Blend it with your blender of choice. Either blur it or smudge it. I like smudging. Smudging is like my favorite thing. And you know, it's not bad. It's pretty simple. It's not perfect, but we did it quickly. If you want to go ahead and do a little more, you can make another layer, and all these types of layers are for like shiny stuff. Like you can add some soft lights on her face if you pick, you know. And this is what the airbrush tool is really good for, is for adding, if you put the opacity really low, you can just kind of dab, and that might be a little not light enough. Add little areas of light, like around her nose or her mouth. And it's little things like that. It's like, see, that makes a pretty, you know, it makes a big difference. It makes it look nice. You can also add like a little bit of pink to her lips. Like, let's label this one soft light. It's a very subtle kind of layer. Let's use another one of these like light layers, An overlay layer, you can use it for, like, let's use it for like lips. Let's say she's wearing lipstick. An overlay layer would be good for, like, you know, adding a little pop of color. It's a little lighter. That looks a little more like Chloe lipstick. If you were to change the type of layer, see how dark it is now? There's so many different possibilities just with the types of layers. So play around with those. And you can erase the edges to make it look more like dramatic, or you can keep the edges blurry to make it look a little more like, you know, like that's her natural color instead of like a lipstick kind of color. So anyway, like, let's label this one lips. If you were to change this one from a soft light layer to a vivid light, see how much it changes. But there are lots of different uses for all the layers. Just I don't have time to go over them right now, but just play around with them. There's so many different possibilities. It's so much fun to do this. I hope this helped a little bit. So let me know if I answered your questions. If you need anything else for me to answer, you can just comment on the video or on my Tumblr. Anything else that you need clarified, I apologize if I slurred. I'm still a little bit scatterbrained and medicine addled. So anyway, I hope this helped.